Ever had a day so bad you whispered, "It can't get worse"? Hold that thought. Picture a dawn where your alarm is a church bell, your commute is a mud road, and your boss is a man who literally owns the mill, the oven, and maybe your freedom. Welcome to East Anglia, early 1300s. Meet Elena, a peasant with hands tougher than leather and a spine that refuses to bow. Today, she wakes at something like 4 summer light bleeding through a shuttered hole, smoke clinging to a thatch roof thick with mice. Her first breath tastes of ash and wet straw. She checks an ox yoke with fingers split by last autumn's harvest. And just when she thinks the day's plan is simple plow, weed, live dark clouds roll in from the North Sea. If the rain hits before the barley stands, everyone starves. Think your inbox is stressful? Elena hears thunder, and then something stranger than thunder hooves, a steward and a summons. We'll get there. First, the field. The village year runs like a drumbeat you feel in your bones. Spring means plowing, 2 oxen, 1 heavy wooden plow, and Elena hanging her full weight on the stilt to keep the blade true. No tractor. No seat. Every crooked furrow is grain lost in winter. She breathes mud, curses roots, and learns that the earth will bully you unless you push back, politely but firmly. Quick poll. How long before your hands beg for a keyboard and a latte? Summer is a marathon you run at sprint pace. Weeding is finger-to-soil diplomacy. Every stalk of thistle is a tiny rebellion. Kids clap rags and yell at birds like a feathered crime wave just landed. Crop rotation isn't theory here. It's what the old people do because hunger punished anyone who ignored it. Wheat shifts to beans, rye to fallow, because asking the same strip to perform the same trick twice is how you teach winter to laugh at you. By high summer, the fields go metallic and the village becomes a blade. Sickles flick, wrists burn, and straw rasps stripes into skin. Save the grain heads, don't spill them, and keep rhythm or your shoulder locks up like a rusty hinge. A cartwheel bites a rut, 20 backs shout at gravity, and for 1 dizzy minute, even the priest mutters something not in Latin. Clouds pile up like a bad idea. Someone hums a harvest tune to keep the cut steady. You feel the clock in your neck. Evenings become a dust storm called progress. Threshing in a low barn under a smoke-blackened roof, Elena swings a flail until her arms wobble. The floor is packed earth, the light a rushlight, dried reed, and tallow that glows like a tired firefly. Chaff coats her lashes. She blinks seed and grit. She sneezes and laughs at the same time, because surviving here requires ridiculous multitasking. Winter is repair disguised as rest. Thatch is stitched, fences propped, yokes pegged. The house is wattle, and daub sticks woven like a giant basket, plastered with mud and chopped straw, and the flooring is yesterday's dirt plus everyone's footprints. Oiled parchment pretends to be glass, rags pretend to be insulation. The hearth smokes on purpose, preserving the thatch while turning lungs into chimneys. Chickens sleep inside because warmth outranks etiquette. Drop a spoon and you'll find bones, beetles, or both. The midden just outside the dump records the truth. Cracked pots, fish spines, a bent nail tapped straight and used again. Archaeologists would call it data. Elena calls it Tuesday. Food is honest. Dark bread, pottage thick enough to park a spoon, onions, leeks, beans that outlast weather, cabbage salted into obedience. Pork arrives salted in slabs, fresh meat is a festival rumor. Small ale is breakfast because low-alcohol brew is safer than a random stream. Your soda would be judged for showing off. Grain becomes bread only after the Lord's watermill takes its measured bite, and the communal oven sells you heat by the slot. The first loaf might feed duty, the best loaf pays back a favor, and what's left feeds the people who swung sickles until their hands stopped arguing. Calories here are community decisions. And the calendar? It's dotted with saints' days that tell you when to stop swinging. How many days off? Depends on parish lord, weather, and the unspoken truth that when rain threatens, some rules go wobbly. Fasting twists menus. Fish allowed, meat not. Inland, fish means river eels or salted herring, traveled farther than most villagers will. People get creative, almond milk when dairy is banned, oil pies that read like loopholes on a plate. Religion is a net. The knots are human hands. The manor court is reality TV without the TV. The steward sits where the light flatters his parchments. The reeve, elected from villagers, keeps the vibe legal. Cases roll by. Fence encroachment. Ditch duty dodged. Pigs with bad aim. Fine sting. But peasants bring complaints too. A cart crushed onions. A promise broke. Brewing got out of hand at midnight. Sometimes they win. Justice isn't blind. It's local. Also, if someone yells hue and cry after a thief and you don't run, you pay a fine. Imagine a neighborhood where your cardio is legally mandatory. Freedom is complicated. Some folks are serfs tied to the soil with dues and labor and stuff. Others rent in cash or kind, freer on paper and sometimes in practice. A person can buy space in their life with coin, but coin mostly arrives in crumbs. Elena counts obligations like beads, days on the Lord's fields, fees at the mill, favors owed to neighbors who showed up with ladders during storms. The village survives by barter of muscle and memory. Alone is dangerous. Together is policy. Medicine is equal parts nerve and knowledge. Learned physicians talk humors. Elena visits the wise woman who knows which leaf eases fever and which honey keeps wounds clean. Barber surgeons move fast because pain waits for no one. A crushed finger becomes a legend by nightfall. The scar predicts rain better than a weathercock. Ancient holes healed in skulls tell us trepanning sometimes worked, not common, not myth. When plague rumors flicker north decades later, people fight air with burned herbs and vinegar cloths. Those famous beak masks? That's a later fashion show. Here it's hoods, prayers, and stubborn housekeeping. Joy refuses to wait for permission. Mayday crowds stack ribbons around a pole. Priests call it trouble. Dancers call it oxygen. Football is a village-wide scrum that ignores property lines and good sense. Wrestling, archery, dice, totally not loaded, stop asking. Minstrels swap songs for ale, spoons become percussion, weddings devour 3 days and half the pantry. The bride wears her best color, not purity cosplay. Gifts are tools, promises, and the glorious loan of an ox when yours limps. If you think medieval life is gray, listen to the laughter bleeding through smoke after midnight. Love is logistics with fireworks. Couples meet at churchyards, markets, and harvest crews. Parents angle for fields that touch and skills that lock together. Words spoken seriously, with witnesses, can form a marriage even without marble and choir. Cue court cases about exactly what someone promised and how sober they were. Newlyweds often squeeze into parental cottages until chance or mortality opens a door. Mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law could power a mill wheel. Children work early. Geese don't supervise themselves, but still carve wooden horses and race sticks in ditches because childhood hacks joy out of anything. Women's work is the skeleton. If it collapses, the entire body falls. Elena bakes, brews, spins, weeds, negotiates in markets that smell like damp wool and onion. In town, women sell ale, bread, candles, depending on guild tempers and who's watching. Power is practical. Who tracks debts in her head? Who holds the keys? Who knows which neighbor will lend quietly at dawn? Law squeezes. Competence leaks through cracks. Back to that summons. The steward claims Elena's pig vacationed in the Lord's barley. A fine, of course. She stands straight, lists the hedge she repaired in rain, the watch she kept when a neighbor labored, the yoke she lent when the reeve's ox faltered. None of that is statute. All of it is community math. The room nods. The fine shrinks. Justice? Call it weather. You can't order sun, but you can stack hay under a ready roof. Now the real storm. Clouds squat like giants over the barley. Elena grabs her sickle and bolts. The village contracts to one idea: beat the rain. Carts creak. Stacks rise. A boy vanishes in grain and resurfaces wheat-crowned and guilty. Someone sings to push rhythm into tired arms. The first drops slap leaves. Tarps go up. Wheels get chalked. Breath holds. If they lose this hour, winter bites harder. If they win, the pottage goes thick, and the midwife gets paid in bread and thanks. Which way does the scale tip? It tips toward survival barely. Night arrives, soaked but satisfied. Laughter spills out, thin and bright as wire. Elena leans her forehead against the barn door, lets silence drain the ache. Tomorrow brings threshing, counting, quiet bargaining over whose geese misunderstood property law. But for 1 minute, everything is wet straw, aching hands, and relief that feels like a small miracle. Here's the twist you didn't know you needed. Medieval peasants didn't just endure, they engineered survival from scraps, rotations without textbooks, mutual aid without hashtags, festivals that turned scarcity into rhythm, faith braided with folk sense, law bent by custom, a house that smokes on purpose, a loaf that costs 3 kinds of debt, a court that fines you for skipping a chase and forgives you for fixing a hedge. Strength here isn't stoic silence. It's loud cooperation. So the next time your Wi-Fi hiccups or delivery runs late, imagine Elena at noon with thunder chewing the horizon and a steward waving parchment. She doesn't post. She doesn't pout. She picks up a blade and moves. Ordinary people like her carried centuries on their backs. 1 furrow straightened, 1 roof rethatched, 1 neighbor helped, 1 storm outwaited. That's the operating system under our history. Elena finally sleeps, cheek on straw, ash in her hair, a smile she didn't schedule. Tomorrow the ox will snort, the miller will measure just a bit too generously for himself, the priest will frown, the children will terrorize crows, and life will snap back into its grooves. And if thunder growls again, the village will tighten, lift, and laugh anyway, because fear doesn't win when hands stay busy, and bread gets shared. If this made the past feel close enough to smell the smoke, hit subscribe to Medieval Spirit, and let's keep walking into history with muddy boots and clear eyes.